Good evening. I am Clara Nightwell. Tonight, I am here with Rowan Hartsteele.
Good evening, Clara. Das Lernor to choose that evening at 1:02, deiner Day.
Philosophy often speaks about virtue and restraint, but what happens when a philosopher stands beside an emperor? Tonight, we turn to a Roman thinker who attempted to guide power from within.
A Stoic advisor at the center of imperial authority.
We are speaking about Seneca.
A philosopher who tried to reconcile ethics with empire.
Then let us begin with the world of Rome under Nero.
Lucius Annaeus Seneca was born around the beginning of the 1st century in Cordoba, in Roman Hispania. He was educated in Rome, where he studied rhetoric and philosophy under teachers influenced by Stoicism. From early on, he moved between intellectual life and public career, a combination that would define his trajectory.
So he was not isolated from politics?
No. Seneca entered the Roman Senate and developed a reputation for eloquence and philosophical discipline. Under the Emperor Caligula, his prominence nearly cost him his life, as imperial suspicion often followed intellectual distinction. Later, during the reign of Claudius, he was accused of political misconduct and exiled to the island of Corsica.
So exile shaped him?
Yes. During exile, he wrote philosophical works reflecting on adversity, self-control, and the instability of fortune. After 8 years, he was recalled to Rome at the request of Agrippina, who sought a tutor for her son Nero. This appointment placed Seneca at the center of imperial succession. All in the land.
A philosopher educating a future emperor.
Yes. And that proximity to power would become the defining tension of his life. When Nero became emperor in the year 54, he was still young. During the early years of his reign, governance was heavily influenced by Seneca and the Praetorian prefect Burrus. This period is sometimes described as relatively stable compared to what would follow.
So philosophy briefly shaped imperial rule?
To an extent, yes. Seneca attempted to guide Nero toward moderation, restraint, and clemency. He wrote on clemency as a reflection on how a ruler should exercise power without cruelty. The text presents the emperor as a figure who must master himself before governing others. Clemency, in Seneca's argument, is not weakness. It is disciplined authority.
So restraint becomes strength.
Exactly. A ruler who governs through fear destabilizes his own position. A ruler who governs through measured justice sustains legitimacy. Yet even during these early years, tensions were visible. Imperial politics involved rivalry, suspicion, and the concentration of authority in a single figure.
So philosophy operated inside a fragile structure.
Yes. Seneca was attempting to apply Stoic ethics within a system that rewarded consolidation rather than restraint. As Nero's reign progressed, the balance that had defined the early years began to shift. The death of Burrus removed a stabilizing influence within the imperial administration. At the same time, Nero increasingly distanced himself from senatorial oversight and traditional constraints.
So, the structure narrowed around one will.
Yes. Imperial authority in Rome was always concentrated, but its exercise depended on political relationships and perception. As Nero's decisions became less restrained, suspicion spread within the elite. Seneca, meanwhile, had accumulated significant wealth and influence, which made him both powerful and vulnerable. Critics questioned whether a Stoic committed to moderation could remain credible while participating in imperial politics.
So his philosophy was tested by proximity to power.
Exactly. Seneca requested permission to withdraw from public life and return his wealth to the emperor, attempting to distance himself from political volatility. Nero refused the offer, but gradually reduced Seneca's influence. In this period, Seneca devoted more attention to writing, producing works that emphasize inner freedom over external position. In letters to Lucilius, he argues that true security cannot depend on political favor or imperial proximity. The Stoic ideal shifts from shaping rulers to mastering oneself.
So the focus moves inward.
Yes, when external structures grow unstable, the Stoic response is not rebellion, but internal discipline. Yet the political atmosphere in Rome had become increasingly tense. Accusations of conspiracy circulated. Trust eroded within the imperial circle. In the year 65, After the discovery of the Pisonian conspiracy, Nero ordered Seneca to end his life, rather than face public execution.
So the philosopher could not escape the structure he tried to guide.
No. His final act became part of the Stoic narrative of composure under unavoidable power. The structural question in Seneca's life is not whether he succeeded in guiding Nero, but whether philosophy can survive inside concentrated power. Rome under the early empire was not a constitutional system in the later sense. It preserved republican forms, but authority ultimately rested in a single figure.
So influence depended on proximity.
Yes, advisors could shape decisions only so long as the emperor permitted it. Seneca's strategy was not opposition but moral formation. On Clemency, he presents the emperor as a rational being whose greatness lies in restraint. He argues that fear produces instability, while measured authority produces loyalty. Clemency becomes a political instrument, not merely a moral virtue.
Zoethics becomes statecraft.
Exactly. Seneca attempts to translate Stoic self-control into imperial governance, but the imperial structure contained incentives that undermined restraint. Absolute authority encourages suspicion. Suspicion encourages preemptive action. In such an environment, moderation may appear as weakness rather than strength.
So the system resists correction.
Yes, Seneca's life illustrates a structural tension between philosophical virtue and autocratic concentration of power. Even if a ruler begins with restraint, the architecture of unchecked authority can distort incentives over time. Seneca's withdrawal from politics reflects an implicit recognition of these limits. He increasingly emphasized inner sovereignty, the idea that while external control may be unstable, the disciplined mind remains free.
So when public power cannot be reformed, personal mastery remains.
That is the Stoic resolution. The empire may be volatile, but the individual can cultivate constancy. In the final stage of Seneca's life, the tension between philosophy and empire becomes unavoidable. After years of proximity to authority, his position had grown increasingly precarious. The Pisonian conspiracy of 65 did not need firm proof to implicate him. He met in systems built on concentrated rule. Suspicion alone can become decisive.
So proximity to power becomes vulnerability.
Exactly. Whether or not Seneca actively participated in the conspiracy, his independence and past influence made him expendable. Nero ordered him to end his life, avoiding a public execution. In Roman political culture, this form of compelled self-determination preserved a degree of dignity while removing a perceived threat. Seneca's response, as recorded by Tacitus, aligned with Stoic ideals of composure and acceptance of necessity. For the Stoic, death is neither spectacle nor escape, but a boundary of nature to be met without panic.
So his final act reinforced his doctrine.
Yes, whether one views his life as compromised or courageous, his end became inseparable from his teaching. Yet the deeper issue remains structural. Can philosophical restraint meaningfully influence a system that centralizes authority in a single figure? Seneca's career suggests that ethical counsel can shape power temporarily, but cannot fully transform its architecture. When institutional limits are weak, personal virtue must carry the burden of stability, and personal virtue, however disciplined, remains vulnerable to political suspicion.
So the lesson is not simple heroism.
No, it is a recognition of limits. Seneca demonstrates both the ambition and the fragility of philosophy within imperial structures. His writings endure not because he conquered power, but because he articulated how one might remain internally free when external authority cannot be controlled. In the end, Seneca leaves us with a distinction between external authority and internal sovereignty. He did not reform the Roman Empire. He did not establish constitutional limits on imperial rule. What he offered instead was a disciplined framework for confronting power without surrendering judgment.
So freedom shifts inward.
Yes, for the Stoic, freedom is not the absence of constraint, but mastery over one's response to it. Seneca's political experience reinforced this idea. When structures cannot be reshaped, the disciplined mind becomes the last domain of autonomy. This resolution does not excuse tyranny, nor does it romanticize suffering. It reframes dignity as consistency between thought and action under pressure.
So philosophy becomes endurance.
Exactly. Seneca's life suggests that proximity to power tests integrity more severely than opposition from a distance. His legacy rests not in political victory, but in the insistence that character remains within one's control, even when authority does not.
Before we close tonight, let us take a brief pause and welcome Margaret. Margaret, for those who want to understand Seneca in relation to power, where would you invite them to continue?
Thank you, Clara. In this case, I would suggest beginning with On Clemency by Seneca.
That was written for Nero.
Yes, it was addressed directly to the young emperor and outlines the idea that power must be restrained by self-control.
So it is philosophy written inside the court.
Exactly. It shows Seneca attempting to shape imperial authority through ethical argument rather than opposition.
That feels essential for understanding his position.
Some ideas only reveal their weight when written directly to power.
Thank you, Margaret. That is a thoughtful place to pause tonight.
Thank you, Clara. It was a pleasure.
After Seneca's death, his political influence ended, but his writings did not. Stoicism continued to shape Roman intellectual life, particularly through figures such as Epictetus and later Marcus Aurelius. In these later thinkers, the emphasis on internal discipline over external control becomes even more pronounced.
So his ideas survived the empire he served.
Yes, as imperial structures shifted and eventually fragmented, Seneca's reflections on time, fortune, anger, and restraint remained portable. During late antiquity and the medieval period, Christian writers engaged with Stoic moral discipline, sometimes adapting it to theological frameworks. In the Renaissance, Seneca's essays were widely read as guides to ethical self-governance. Early modern thinkers admired his concise reflections on power, mortality, and composure under uncertainty.
So he becomes a manual for instability.
In many ways, yes. His writings address individuals navigating systems beyond their control. Modern revivals of Stoicism often draw heavily on Seneca's letters to Lucilius for practical reflection. His analysis of anger, ambition, wealth, and time continues to resonate in societies shaped by rapid change and concentrated authority.
So the structural tension remains.
Exactly. Seneca's life does not resolve the conflict between philosophy and power. It illustrates the difficulty of maintaining ethical coherence inside concentrated authority. His enduring legacy lies in the insistence that internal mastery remains possible, even when political mastery does not.
Thank you for staying with us tonight, and thank you, Rowan, for guiding us through philosophy at the center of empire.
Thank you, Clara. Some ideas endure because they speak to conditions that never fully disappear.
If this conversation stayed with you, you are welcome to like, comment, and subscribe. You will find other episodes here where history, ideas, and power are approached slowly. Until next time, stay with us.